Hey folks, it's Cameron from the Brushfire Mind, and this is coffee. If you check out the link down below in the description, you can find ways to support us by buying us more coffee. Okay, thanks.
And I'm just sick of seeing him. I know he says he's going to retire. Someone needs to grab that little elf and chuck him across the Potomac.
Fauci is taking the largest golden parachute in U.S. history.
That doesn't surprise me. I mean, after
$350,000 annual pension.
I don't know that that's the largest golden parachute in history. Some of those Wall Street guys have walked away with
U.S.
millions.
government pension.
Oh,
It's
okay.
the largest U.S. government pension ever paid. That's not speculation. That is the case.
Okay. Well, it was important because when you said largest ever, I thought you meant like ever. And I was
No.
There's no possible way.
No.
Like failing on Wall Street's the best way to get rich ever.
Yeah, just like every other thing that is true about government. It's just like every other thing that the government does, the private sector does it better. Even golden parachutes. Hell, the private sector fails better.
Yes. So
Andrew says, "Here comes Nuremberg 2.0. We can only hope."
no, the problem is it's not. It wouldn't even take Nuremberg. Okay, I just wish
Just following orders.
Look, I just wish when people like this got to the end, they've amassed all this wealth and power and clout and everything. It'd be nice if they could just spend their remaining days on Earth in humiliation. That they know that they are beneath contempt, that except for the small percentage of the population that they manage to remain brainwashed, the rest of us effectively have exiled them to an island, a la Napoleon when he finally lost. Like that would be great. And I think it would be great, and I think it would be effective because guys like Fauci, I don't know if you've noticed, but Tony's got a bit of an ego.
Yeah, a little bit. And statements like this don't help. Whether you've met him in person or not, whether you met him personally or not, he has touched all Americans' lives with his work. President Joe Biden said of news that his chief medical advisor, Anthony Fauci, is finally retiring. That is absolutely correct, because the work of Dr. Anthony Fauci, his most recent failings have hurt you all personally. I still see people driving alone with masks on.
But anyhow, because of pieces of shit like him, but I really think the broader point is, like when Hillary was defeated, for example, Hillary should have just been embarrassed to go out in public for the rest of her life. I think that for a lot of these people, if they knew that when they came to the end, they were going to spend the remainder of their days in absolute humiliation, a lot of them would change their behavior, even if all they did was change their behavior enough to where they were simply careful enough to not get caught. Even that would be a net positive because, I mean, I don't know how much time you want to spend on Fauci and how wrong he was about AIDS, for example.
Oh, yeah, let's touch some of his greatest hits. For example, Fauci, Dead Orphans, AIDS Drug Trials, and the Lies. These studies were funded in whole or in part by the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, a federal agency headed up by Anthony Fauci since 1984. In 2014, investigative reporter Liam Sheff wrote an article at omsj.org looking back on the orphan scandal. 10 years earlier, he had broken the story and was then subjected to multiple attacks in the press. In 2004, I broke open this is from Sheff's article. 2004, I broke open the NIH clinical trial scandal, the internationally covered story of hundreds of New York City orphans used by government agencies and pharmaceutical companies in deadly AIDS drug trials. In reporting this issue, I entered the orphanage where children were being used as guinea pigs, and over a period of several years took interviews with mothers, children, and child care workers at the Incarceration Child Center. I also interviewed the medical director and investigated the FDA documentation and published medical literature on the tests and drugs used, drugs which were often force-fed through nasal and gastric tubes to children. Reported several deaths in children, and although the mainstream denied that any deaths were due to drug toxicity, they admit that over 200 children died. And if,
That's right, kids. We used Oliver Twist to test out the AIDS virus thingy.
And of course, when Fauci got caught in that whole scandal, and they wouldn't let him use children to test his murder drugs on anymore, he just started feeding puppies to
sand fleas,
carnivorous sand fleas. And that's without even going into all of the just grotesque failures of Fauci's early career and the so-called AIDS epidemic, where, of course, we were told, they brought people into the school to talk to us. They brought men to tell us about how they were HIV positive and it had ruined their lives, and we were all going to catch AIDS. They were all gay.
Yeah, it's kind of like the monkeypox. It's a lot like the monkeypox.
Strange. They all just happened to be gay. I'm not saying that that's got anything to do with anything at all.
Well, I'm sure some of them were drug addicts.
Well, yeah, I'm sure there were some of these gay men were also drug addicts.
Well, no, I mean, look, and I know exactly what you're talking about because I'm the same age as you. I remember it being on Oprah that, by the year, I forget, 2000 or 2010, whatever it was, there would be like 3 million heterosexual people in this country with AIDS. I forget, I literally forget the exact numbers, but basically, guys like Dr. Fauci swore up and down that the day was coming, that the disease was gonna jump outside the homosexual community, and that, we had to take it serious. I mean, man, it's an epidemic, it's a pandemic, it's all these things, and
It sure does sound familiar.
Yes, it does. Sounds very, very familiar. It sounds almost like the science never tested his own hypothesis, or it actually sounds a lot like
his hypotheses were tested and then the results were hidden.
I've heard people that are also doctors that are also extremely intelligent and well-educated and everything that would quite literally be one-to-one peers of Dr. Fauci talk, and a lot of them do not like him because he's very arrogant, does not like to be contradicted, and well, frankly, it's all about like they refer to him, like that quote about it's all about Tony's ego. Like that's what they say about him. It's all about Tony's ego, and we're talking about a guy that's I am the science.
If you criticize me, you're criticizing science.
Well, look. Even God had to rest on the seventh day, so at 80 years old, the science is gonna retire. I'm sorry to leave you. Look, it's just. Even a man like Tony gets exhausted feeding AIDS fleas to puppies. It happens.
AIDS fleas to puppies. Woof. So let's just take a peek. The New York Post has a great one. Enough of Fauci's lies, from Miranda Devine. That's a hell of a name. Anthony Fauci was absolutely adamant that the National Institutes of Health has never funded dangerous research on bat viruses in the Chinese labs suspected of being the source of the COVID-19 pandemic.
We gave money to a third party, and the third party gave the money to China. We didn't do it directly.
So, remember when it was verboten to suggest the Wuhan lab leak theory, which we now know conclusively to have been the case?
Yeah, the only question was...
There's no longer a question of how it happened. Yeah. We're now certain that it didn't come from wet markets and bats.
Well, it could have spread to the wet markets because of the Wuhan lab leak. Look, the only thing we don't know about the Wuhan lab leak was it an accident or an accident?
Right.
That's the only thing we don't know.
And as we've discussed on this show several times, it doesn't matter if it was an accident. Tactically, strategically, once the virus had out, then the Chinese had control of essentially a biological weapon, and all they had to do was control the vector of spread, as in they shut down travel between provinces in China, but they did not shut down travel from Wuhan out to the rest of the world.
Those commie bastards. Like, that is, I mean, from a purely tactical standpoint, I'm kind of in awe at the balls of a move like that. But that doesn't mean it's not evil AF. Like,
Right. I mean, yes.
So whenever you say, oh, the government wouldn't do that, let's include the fact that the government would use a pass-through to fund gain-of-function research in China and will force-feed their AIDS trials to New York orphans. Like, good Lord. Like,
Through feeding tubes. Through nasopharyngeal feeding tubes. Are you kidding? It's just like, wonder if he used one of those giant frickin' cotton swabs like the Cuomo brothers.
I'm sorry, man. I don't get it. Maybe I need more coffee.
To force feed the drugs down their feeding tubes. The giant cotton swab.
I don't know what that has
Like a
anything to do with
COVID
the
test?
Cuomo brothers.
You don't remember the Cuomo brothers doing their bit on CNN where he brought out the giant cotton? It was a freaking Q-tip like this big to make a joke about how uncomfortable the... You don't remember that shit?
No.
Oh, God, they were roundly criticized for that absolute abortion of a joke. But here's a great sentence. It's like being a little pregnant. The NIH either funded so-called gain-of-function research to juice up bat coronaviruses in China, or it didn't. Turns out it did, and it did by exploiting a loophole in an Obama administration ban on the Frankenstein research put in place in 2014.
Well, you can only be a little pregnant, just like you can only have a little abortion. I'm the science. Do not argue with me. I'm absolutely impeccable. Is the fact that we have contempt for Dr. Fauci coming through yet? That, Scott Adams has got a thing about, when you trust the experts, do so at your own peril. I don't know that there is anybody that is a clearer example of that concept than Dr. Anthony Fauci.
I'm from the government, and I'm here to help.
No.
It's like saying you want to be a grown-up and a Democrat.
Yeah. So, what is the, just of the things we've discussed so far, okay, what is the shittiest thing Fauci has done so far? His absolute
that's a tough
narcissism over COVID, the fact that he used it to turn himself into a star, okay, the fact that he basically had dogs eaten alive, the fact that he did experimental drug research. Hey, boy, I just put something together. Fauci's totally okay with forcing experimental drugs on kids. I don't know if that has anything to do at all with the COVID response. I can't quite put it together in my brain.
And I'm sure it's completely unrelated to the recent studies that have led all of the European medical facilities that were engaged in prepubescent trans surgeries and drugs to stop all of those programs, having discovered that they have incredibly negative, almost inevitable negative side effects. But
Fauci's worked for the government for 55 years.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Almost as long as Joe Biden. Which is another interesting little piece of trivia. But I think if I had to put my finger on it, the worst thing, maybe the worst thing that we can point directly at Fauci is this. Fauci initially greeted COVID by insisting it wasn't a major threat, only to flip almost overnight into a strident hawk. Now, when it says almost overnight was a few months. And I want you to think back, put on your Wayback glasses and think back, end of January 2020. Donald Trump said, this is a problem. I'm shutting down travel. Shutting down travel to China. That's where the problem is.
And you're racist.
And he got roundly criticized for being a racist. Fauci
Hitler's
immediately
racist.
ran to the first camera he could find with a red blinking light on it and screamed, "No, it's not a problem. It's not a problem. You should go out and live your lives like you normally do." And then we had Nancy Pelosi come down to Chinatown. Unless you're a racist, because you're a deplorable, you belong in the basket. And then we
Why
had
Chinatown, Nancy? Why?
and so basically, what we had was early on. Trump tried to implement an effective quarantine, and he was in a very difficult position because the correct thing to do when we first learned about the COVID pandemic was to quarantine the area that was infected, because that's how a quarantine works, right? If you have a biological weapon go off in a giant hotel, the CDC doesn't come out and throw up tents and start shoving people inside. They don't come out and take everybody out of the hotel and spread them around. Right? And they don't go and gather up all the healthy people and lock them in jail so that they can let the sick people out of the hotel. No, they tent that son of a bitch and say, "Stay put until we figure it out." You quarantine the sick. Fauci and his ilk, their solution was to lock up the everybody. To lock them all away.
I'm a prison planet. Like it's difficult to exaggerate it how close we came to literal global prison planet.
Yeah. And Trump's first reaction was, "Oh, this thing's happening in Wuhan and it's a
It's a Chinese
serious
problem.
threat. It's dangerous.
Let's
we need
be
to tent that
suspicious
bitch.
of China. Yeah.
We need to quarantine China from the U.S." Absolutely, 100% the right move. And how do we know it was the right move? Because every Democrat said it was the wrong move, called him a racist for doing it, and then, as soon as they were in a position to do it themselves, they did something similar. Right? So we know it was the right move because the Democrats said it was a bad move, and then they did it too. That's the surest way to know that a Republican is right, is that a Democrat says different.
Yeah, especially if they say different for extremely emotional reasons
Right.
that are
You're
dangerous.
racist.
Yeah, that's right. You're a misogynist. You're a racist. You're a homophobe. No. I
You
just
don't fit the message.
I just have questions about how monkeypox spreads to children since it requires close contact. It's not a true STD, but you're not getting it through the air.
Yeah.
Just say it. And speaking of monkeypox, I just need to retire before my symptoms begin to show. It's not related to my opinions about AIDS 40 years ago at all.
Yeah. So Fauci's been lying and screwing up the entire medical world for 55 years. And finally, I want to say it's over. But
He's still going to talk to cameras.
Temper your celebration, son, because he's still going to go out and talk to cameras. He's going to be on the news shows. He's going to write a book. He's going to write a book. He's going to go on Sesame Street and stab Oscar the Grouch and the Count.
Yeah, I mean, I go back to what I said at the beginning of the show. I wish there was
And chuck him across